Okay, great. Welcome, everyone. We're going to kick it off with a video just to start us off while people still come in to the meeting, while people continue to join.
G-O-O-D-M-O-R-N-I-N-G H-O-L-A. Hope you have a really good day.
Hola! Buenos dias! Woo! On behalf of City Year, we just wanted to say that we love you all and we miss you so much. And of course, we just wanted to give you a good morning.
Go over our steps real quick. We're going to talk about some examples using a balance, and then we'll do one example using some decimals. Okay? Now, if you'll notice,
I am showing my student how to solve these percentage problems and how to set a proportion and what that actually looks like.
So let's jump in. Today we're going to cover adding negative numbers, which is a topic that I think is really important and even I struggle with sometimes.
This is Ms. Scott here to remind you that your perseverance will help you succeed.
Don't forget to smile today. Hey, don't forget to smile today.
City Year is always here for you, even though we're not together right now. We hope that we can see you soon. We really miss you.
We think about you every single day, and we miss having you all in the classroom, learning from you, and seeing you all be your goofiest selves.
Welcome, everyone. Good evening. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Matt Schaefer. I'm the Managing Director of External Affairs at City Year New York. And tonight I'm filling in for Laura Ham, our Executive Director. Laura has a very good reason not to be here tonight, which is that she's enjoying her maternity leave with her healthy and happy baby girl, Waverly. I'll share on behalf of Laura that she says hi and she's wishing everybody well and safety and happiness during these times. Okay, it's now my great pleasure to kick off this evening's Fireside Chat with Natalie Lamarck and Jim Balfanz. Our main goal tonight is to share updates with you on City Year and how we're responding to the COVID-19 crisis. It's really an excellent group of people that we have here tonight, full of City Year's greatest champions and supporters. And there's going to be an opportunity in the second part of the conversation for a dialogue. So just a brief few notes about logistics before we begin. Everyone's going to start out on mute for this conversation. And also, if you have the capability to, please feel free to enable your camera so that we can create a sense of community on this call. Also, for optimum viewing, please use Zoom's speaker view rather than the gallery view. That option can be found in the upper right-hand corner of your screen. And as I mentioned, in the second part of the call, we're going to open it up to a conversation between Natalie, Jim, and the audience. And at that point, if you'd like to ask a question, you can just put that in the chat box, and we have moderators who will recognize you at that point in time. Okay, before I introduce our speakers for the evening, I want to share a brief overview of City Year New York and where we are in terms of scale and geographic focus. So just very quickly, City of New York this year, FY20, we have 200 AmeriCorps members, young idealists between the ages of 18 and 25 years old. We're serving 10,000 students in 18 of New York City's public schools. And those schools are located in our long-term community partner neighborhoods of East New York, Brooklyn, East Harlem, the South Bronx, and Long Island City, Astoria, Queens. Just a brief note about our service model. AmeriCorps members serve full days in schools. They're their tutors, mentors, role models. They provide after-school programming and important social and emotional support to students. And we were doing that this school year all the way until March, mid-March, when schools were closed and City Year pivoted to online learning. We're going to talk a lot more about that later in this call. But also just wanted to mention the double bottom line of City Year. AmeriCorps members themselves go through a transformational experience as part of City Year. And here we have some of our team leaders from this year representing their school spirit. Okay, now I'd like to introduce our guests for the evening. Natalie Lamarck is the General Counsel of New York Life, and she's the incoming co-board chair of City of New York's Advisory Board, where she'll serve alongside Ryan Cotton. She's been a lifelong advocate of mentoring and professional development and is truly a remarkable leader, as you'll see tonight. It's always a pleasure to spend time with Natalie, and Natalie will be interviewing Jim Balfanz. Jim Balfanz is the CEO of City Year as of December 2019. Jim's been a lifelong advocate of educational equity and national service, and Jim's been with City Year since 1993 when he did his core year in Boston. Since then, he's held a number of leadership roles at the organization, including executive director, COO, and most recently, president. I'm so glad that you're going to have time to spend with Jim tonight. And without further ado, I'd like to pass it to Jim to kick us off.
Terrific. Thank you, Matt, and thank you, Natalie and Ryan and all the City of New York board leaders and champions, investors, and staff that are on the call. I think about all of you very often, knowing that New York City is, really at the epicenter of this pandemic, and just want to start by saying how proud we are to be partnered with you and how much we're thinking about you and care about everything that's happening in New York, as well as our other 29 cities across the country. As Matt said, I've been with City Year for 25 years. I started, after college, doing a year of service, working in a Head Start program. I had a transformational experience. It changed my life about the role that citizens can play in making a difference, the power of national service, the value of a shared experience, serving something larger than yourself, working alongside other young people from diverse socioeconomic, racial, and religious backgrounds. And it's been quite a journey. And I never thought that I would end up being the chief executive officer, but I couldn't be more proud. I also didn't envision having a pandemic within the first 3 months of that. But what I'm here to really share with you tonight is that the City or community from coast to coast is really rising to the challenge and is doing extraordinary work to take care of each other, to find creative ways to serve our students and support our partners in the schools and their families. And it really does demonstrate the strength of City Year, and that's a good thing because it's never been more needed, as we sort of are part of a larger network and larger effort of concerned citizens from the private, public, and social sector working together to take care of each other and to strengthen our country and our world. So this first slide here, if you can pull it up, is really, if there wasn't a pandemic, would I be making the rounds, spending time talking with boards and staff and investors across the City Year network, which is that we're very well positioned, after 30 years because of the hard work of everyone on this call and 30,000 alumni and millions of students that have believed in themselves and believed in each other. The organization is in a strong position, and we've learned a lot, and we're in a place where we could begin to focus on having an expanded impact on students, schools, a systemic impact on policies, and that's really what we're focused on, like a laser, which is advancing educational equity and preparing diverse young people to be effective working across lines of difference, which is something that we know the City or experience does. We have the data to show that, and we know it's something that our country needs and our world needs very much. We've grown to a point of significant scale. The 29 cities in the US are unfortunately producing the majority, over 50% of the non-high school graduates. So we are located at the epicenter of the challenge that we're designed to face. And we have exciting opportunities to take advantage of new knowledge and innovations, to organize ourselves to be more effective and more efficient, to be both nationally aligned and locally relevant in all of our communities moving forward. As we were in the process of socializing that exciting framework for the future, As you all know well, along came a national pandemic, and all the heartache and pain that comes with it, and all the challenges, and in there somewhere some opportunities. And this next slide really just outlines for you as our stakeholders our approach, which is to first think about how do we stabilize and secure the organization. I'm going to spend a few minutes talking to you about that, and later in the conversation we can talk about the opportunities that we see to be a part of reimagining education, and not just helping our students get back to a place that they were before the pandemic, but actually doing the system work and the direct person relationship work to help springboard students forward to meet their full potential. But we stepped back as a few months ago. If you think of running an organization with 3,000 amazing diverse young AmeriCorps members, 300 staff, all embedded in 350 schools across 29 cities and 20 states, and in the course of 2 weeks, that entire school system was shut down. So we stepped back and we said we're going to really focus the organization on 5 key priorities, put everything else on hold. The first was taking care of our people, keeping our core members, our staff, and our students safe. That really entailed a number of things, including we have thousands of core members, and it was a question of whether they were going to be able to receive their living stipend through the federal AmeriCorps program, whether they'd still be eligible for their education awards because of the disruption to the qualifications of a service hour. I'm just was so proud that our public policy team, led by Anne-Maura Connolly, that many of you know, was able to step in and secure real flexibilities, not only for City Year, but for all of AmeriCorps, and literally change the law in the first COVID relief bill to ensure that all of our core members in New York and across the country could receive their education awards. The second was to be creative and really partnering with our schools to find ways to continue to support our students socially, emotionally, and academically. And we're going to talk about the many exciting ways that our organization has pivoted into doing that. Of our 350 schools, close to 325 of them are currently engaged in virtual or distance learning. And we're working hard on the remaining schools. And that's important. The third is really sort of making sure that we have financial stability. We started from a position of strength. Our cash, our government receivables are in a good position. Unlike a number of other AmeriCorps programs and really good nonprofits, we have not had to furlough or lay people off. We are thinking very thoughtfully as we plan for next year, but we're starting from a position of strength, focusing on our people, serving our students, and making sure we make smart decisions, given that there's obviously been a hit to some of our private sector revenue, the loss of galas, so forth. We continue to focus on recruiting our core. We pivoted our entire national and regional recruitment staff to virtual learning, train them up in a few weeks, and are having a lot of success. I'm really proud of City Year New York, which is already over enrolled, I think 103%, which is fantastic, because the students of our 18 partner schools will need those amazing young people next year the way they need the core members that are serving right now. And then finally, just deep engagement with our partners and coalitions to see what we can do to continue to support students and communities, especially the communities that we're committed to, which are being disproportionately impacted by the pandemic, both health and economically, and through education. I think what I want to just conclude this opening with is just to say thank you, and how inspired I am seeing our young adults in the core, our staff, our board members, our private sector investors, our government partners, our school partners, all rise to the challenge to support our students, to support our core members, and to take care of each other. And I look forward to the dialogue tonight, and I'm excited to be partnered with Natalie, and I'll turn it over to my co-convener. Natalie?
Hello. First of all, it's amazing to see all your faces. There's so many faces I haven't seen in a long time. It's a really difficult time for everyone, and I think particularly difficult for us in New York. So taking the time to be here tonight means a lot to all of us. So Jim, you touched on this, that really New York is the epicenter and is dealing with COVID-19 in a way that very few other areas are. So many of our lives have been turned upside down, and many of us, I'm sure, have lost loved ones or know others who have. And as a new CEO, you said this, right? The pandemic wasn't expected. This wasn't something you planned for. And how have you really shifted your focus with some specifics about, for the folks who are on the phone to get a sense of what that has meant to you? And, I think this, that our schools are closed until the end of the year. And, we know LA schools are going to be closed even beyond that point, and we're thinking New York schools might also be closed beyond the end of the year and maybe into the opening of the beginning of the next school year. So we want to get a sense from you on, how the impact of these closures, what will be the effect on the students we serve?
Yeah. Well, let me talk a little bit about what we understand to be the impact on the students. And then I'll move to some of the sort of the scenario planning that we need to all do together for the various different reopening, flexible openings of school districts, across the country. And we're partnering with 50 school districts. The largest, obviously, is New York. I think what you see here on this slide, and just really framing it, that there are multiple crises: an economic one, a health one, and an education one. And all of the research that has been done, all the experts are very clear that there's going to be a COVID slide, up to a year's worth of learning loss. And that is significant when we're talking about the amazing students that we get to serve that have unlimited potential. All of us at City Year believe that potential is equally distributed. The problem is that opportunity is not. And we know that there are systemic inequalities that create additional adversity, for our students. And this pandemic is going to make that worse. We can't sugarcoat that in any way. It's going to make things worse. Everything that we are doing right now, is a good mitigation strategy. It's triage. It's trying to stay connected. Make sure students know there are people that care about them, their core members care about them, try to provide some extra help. You'll see examples. You saw some in the video earlier. You'll see some more of ways that we're connecting with students. But we expect a significant learning loss with students that were already, in many cases, in a fragile academic position. We know that there's going to be greater variation in students' inabilities due to inequalities. If you think about it, it's not just access to computers. It's, do you have enough computers? It's, do you have enough bandwidth? All the systemic inequities of students that are navigating concentrated and generational poverty, are going to exacerbate that. And that is going to be very challenging for teachers, for social workers, for school leaders, because of the extreme variation in what students' needs will be when they return. And then, just a long-term recovery. Katrina, took almost 2 years to get back to sort of where they were after the Katrina disruption. So the key thing is really on the right-hand side of this slide, which is, we know that by design, we have long-term partnerships with the most systemically under-resourced schools. So we are where the most vulnerable students are. We have evidence-based approaches, which we know are going to need to be put in place and sustained. That at the heart of this is relationships, and that's really the paradox of this right now. We know that for learning, students have to feel connected and safe. They have to have multiple positive developmental relationships in their life. And so right at the very time that, because of the trauma and all the challenges related, the very serious challenges, it's harder to make those relationships work. And that's why it's so amazing the way that our core members are finding ways to do that. The mental health and trauma is going to be a huge issue, and that we just need holistic supports, those social, emotional, academic supports, and we're going to have to be flexible. And so we are planning literally around the clock, within the national office, connected with all of our site leaders in New York and across the country, to think about the very different specific scenarios of when schools are going to reopen. How are they going to reopen? What will social distancing look like? Is it going to be a blend of sort of virtual learning and in-person learning? How are we going to have to flex core member schedules? How are we going to take care of our core members and make sure that they're supported in that context? But I think we are going to be in a position, Natalie, to make a really big impact, and it's never been more needed.
Look, I'm a parent of a 7-year-old and a 10-year-old, so I know about virtual schooling, and it's not easy. it's something I'm struggling with at home. And so the question I have is, I want everyone on the call to not just sort of have an ethereal understanding of virtual service, but I want them to feel it. I want them to know what it feels like for the core members, what they're doing. Give us a sense, Jim, and we'll get into sort of more tangible examples later, but give us a sense from your perspective. What are the successes? What are the challenges when it comes to the core serving virtually with the kids?
Yeah, I mean, I think what's working is that we're trying to map to the school's response. So we have core members that are participating during instructional time, operating in chat rooms, helping to answer questions, support students, as teachers instruct. If it's a more, many classrooms are set up where there are assignments that are posted and students just need to work on those. And they're handing them in at different times. So our core members are creating opportunities and flexibility to connect and sort of tutor students. There's a lot of effort just to make sure that the relationships are strong. So they're doing all types of things virtually, through videos, through Instagram, just to connect with students in really important ways to help their social, emotional, and academic growth.
I think we're going to move on to a great example, a short video to give you an idea of exactly how the core members are engaging here in New York, and these are our core members. Despite the Patriots in the background, these are our core members in New York.
All stretched out and floppy like noodles. It's time to get our blood pumping with some cardio. Cardio exercises are ones that make you breathe a little more. This type of exercise is so important because it helps keep your heart healthy, boosts your energy levels, and makes you happier. Today we're going to be doing 2 exercises. First, we're going to be doing one of my favorite cardio exercises. It's called foot fire. You keep your feet a little bit apart, you bend your knees, and then you move your feet up and down as quickly as you can. So we're going to be doing this for 30 seconds and then taking a 30-second rest afterward. If at any point during those 30 seconds you get tired, you can just pause the video, take a rest, and come back and finish when you're ready. So let's start in 3, 2, 1.
Say you and your sister are arguing over who gets to use its family tablet. You might say, when you don't let me use the family tablet, I get really frustrated. Explain what you want to use it for, and then find out what your sister wants to use it for, and get her point of view. Show that you are paying attention by making eye contact and nodding. And when your sister is speaking, make sure that you're really listening to what she has to say.
I love that last clip because it applies to not just relationships between siblings. I think it applies to all relationships. My husband and I watched that clip together last night. Okay, moving on. So, now that I think that gives you guys a little bit of a snippet of how creative the core has been. I mean, they've gone above and beyond. And I know, we also in New York, some of the core members are actually sitting in all day with classes and doing whole class instruction as well. So it's really been amazing. I don't know about the rest of you, but I've been reading about what is the future of school going to look like? What is this going to look like for our kids when we go back to school? And I've been reading things like class sizes are going to be very small, movement will be limited, cafeterias might have to be closed, at least in New York, And my husband's a public school teacher, Jim. We talked about this. So, I've been talking to him about what does he think his experience is going to be when he goes back to school and starts teaching again. And, when you think about City Year, in that kind of an environment where the schools are going to need so much more support from adults in the building to manage through everything, I want you to talk a little bit about how City Year has thought about those issues and are anticipating those needs for the reopening, whenever that does occur.
Yeah, thank you, Natalie. And I think all of us, I have a 13 and 16-year-old, two daughters, and I think, my macro hope is that this national shared experience that we're having is going to elevate our society's appreciation for the role of teachers and for education and the importance of a whole child. I think all the parents that are trying to homeschool and work are getting a real deep appreciation for how important teachers are, and also that it's the academic as well as the social and emotional. It is the whole child approach. And I think where City Year comes in is that we have been following the research, following the evidence. We believe in the science of learning and development, and we know that you can't separate social, emotional, and cognitive development. And we also know that there's tremendous variability in how humans learn. And so the more personalized the learning environment is, the more likely we're going to have more students meet their potential. The more asset-based it is in terms of identifying their strengths and building on those, the more students we're going to have meet their potential. And the challenge is in systemically under-resourced schools, and this was the challenge before the pandemic, and it's going to only be a bigger challenge after the pandemic, is that to ask one teacher that may have 150 students, coming through their different classes throughout the day, to be that constant developmental relationship for 150 students on top of everything else a teacher needs to do is impossible. I don't think there's anyone on this Zoom call that says they could be that caring, connected relationship for 150 people every day. Yet we know from the science and learning and development that because of the toxic impacts of stress, because that once, students are facing anxiety or aren't feeling connected or safe, that they're, we go into fight or flight mode. And if you're in fight or flight mode, you can't focus. If you can't focus, you can't learn. And that's really where City Year AmeriCorps members serving as student success coaches can make the difference, especially in systemically under-resourced schools, because having enough positive developmental relationships to focus on both the academics and the social, emotional, and the relationships in partnerships with teachers and social workers, that counteracts the degree of the scale and intensity in terms of need that students bring when they're working their way through concentrated and generational poverty. It is the baseline for all other redesigning of schools, all other use of evidence-based practices. And so, Natalie, what I feel is that the organization is in the best possible position to try to help our partner schools with the increased challenge, they're going to face. And I do have some good news to share tonight, and there's a slide if we could pull it up. Next week on the 20th, we are publishing a major new national study that was funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and it was an independent review by the Everyone Graduates Center at Johns Hopkins University. And what this did was look at across almost 40,000 students of the more than 225,000 students that attend City Year schools, so all the New York schools and all the schools in our other cities. 40,000 students are the students that are on our City Year AmeriCorps members focus list. So most of you are familiar that Corps members will generally be assigned, somewhere around 8 to 15 young students that have been identified as having risk factors related to attendance, behavior, course performance in English and math. So this is 40,000 students in some of the most systemically under-resourced schools in the country. And within those schools, the students that are already signaling that there's some risk factors to them being on track to meet their potential and contribute to their families and communities in our society. And what this study is going to say is two things. One, there is a rock solid relationship between improving social and emotional skills, because we together have scaled a social emotional assessment across all of our schools. And because of our trusting, longstanding partnerships with the districts, we have access to this data that we can use to inform our practice and contribute to the larger educational field. And what it's showing is that, going from low to average or average to high in a set of social emotional skills is equal to almost a year's worth of learning gains. And then from the City Year perspective, it's showing that the more time spent with City Year AmeriCorps members serving as student success coaches, the greater the academic improvement and the social emotional skills. So this is going to be a major new release. We'll put in the chat. There's a 2-pager with all the data on that. But this comes at a time that before the pandemic, there was a growing understanding of the importance of integrating social, emotional, and academic development. And to do that successfully in systemically under-resourced schools, you need AmeriCorps programs like City Year to serve as student success coaches. And this is some extremely strong data proving the effectiveness of this. And just one thing that really warmed my heart is that during this period of time to support our core members, we do some national trainings for all the core members. So we have, over a couple thousand core members once a week get together, and we sort of source the training or the leadership development nationally for them. And our team walked the core members through the results of this study. And if you could see the chat room, Natalie, of the core members saying, I knew what I was doing mattered, but this means so much to see this hard data proving it. This is so important. This makes it all worthwhile. So I think in terms of the larger field, it's important. In terms of validating the role of City Year and the importance of AmeriCorps, it's important. And it's just important in the lives of our core members and our students to know that when you put core members and students and teachers together and you do it in a smart, evidence-based way, really good things can happen in terms of unlocking the potential of students that can do so much to make our society better. I'll also just point out on this next slide that there is significant evidence even before this study. We know that city or partner schools are 2 to 3 times more likely to improve on state standardized test scores. We know that from Deloitte Consulting, and I think we have some of our partners from Deloitte on the call today, that the return on investment for schools is extremely high. And we have a half a dozen other third-party research projects that have been in the field to help improve our learning and contribute to the larger effort to improve outcomes in systemically underperforming schools that are going to be released in the next year. So I guess what I would say to our City Year champions on the call today is, there is now a mountain of evidence rolling our way that says more than ever, we need to support connecting great young adults serving through City Year with partner schools, and we need to do whatever we can, even in very tough economic times, to make sure that the federal support, that the local public support, and especially the private sector support is there. And I would argue at a time with a challenging economy where every dollar of philanthropy is so precious, there's probably no better investment in terms of creating equitable learning environments and systemically under-resourced schools, and really dealing with the third part of the crisis, right? We think there's the health crisis, the economic crisis, and then the educational crisis. This is clearly among the best possible things that you can invest in. And what I would encourage everyone to think about is how much more can you do at a time like this? I would challenge our Red Jacket Society members, if you're contributing 10,000, could you contribute an extra 25%? If you're a team sponsor, doing 100,000, could you do an extra 25%? And that may seem hard, but what I would say is that we know the students that are most disproportionately impacted by the pandemic. They were the students that were most disproportionately impacted by the systemic inequalities in our country before this. We know how important relationships are. We know how effective core members are. And on top of that, it gives a pathway for great young adults to, in a very hard job market, to do something really meaningful, to develop skills. And we know that the long-term results of spending a year at City Year is an enduring civic mindset. That means more citizens that are contributed to making us a stronger country. So I am taking this moment to make my pitch to all of you to realize that, an investment, not only sustaining it, but finding ways, even just for this 1 year, just to help bridge the organization, to do a little bit more, could really go a long way in creating better outcomes for students that are really facing a lot of challenges in the coming year.
Look, I think, when you think about New York, one of the points the board really wanted to focus on is, it's hard to ask anyone to give anything right now that's not linked to COVID. That's top of mind for everyone. And I think, Allie mentioned this, and other board members have echoed it, but the educational piece of this is not front of mind sometimes. And I hope from everything that you've articulated that it becomes front of mind for everyone. And when we're all thinking about, where we're going to give that extra bit, that we recognize that giving that extra bit in the education space, and specifically to City Year, matters, and we need it. And I think everything you've said today proves and shows that there's no doubt that the need, it was there, and it's even greater now than it was before. The City Year is effective. I think we all know this. I mean, half of the people on this phone are corporate executives who have, corporate coaches. right? Why do we have that? We have that because we know that makes us more effective. And I think the point that I want to make sure everybody gets is we get it. We get that you're being asked by multiple groups right now. This is a need that, and I think you touched on this, Jim, for what you give, we match it with state funds and federal funds. So by giving to city, you're giving to a strong organization that can weather this storm, and your dollars go further. Because there's no doubt that we know you're being called upon by many people and many different entities and groups to give. So I wanna change course just a bit and talk a little bit about City Year in the broader COVID environment and some of the work that AmeriCorps, specifically, not just City Year, but AmeriCorps has been doing to think about how to help the country respond to the COVID-19 crisis.
Absolutely. I think, one of the things we've been talking about is that, as we navigate the risk, as we work every day to take care of our people and be good partners, we also have to look for the opportunities. And I think there's a real opportunity with national service right now. And I know Ann Morra-Connolly, who many of you know well and is a senior executive at City Year and also the president of Voices for National Service, has been working very closely with Senator Coons. And there has been game-changing national service legislation that would grow AmeriCorps from 75,000 to 750,000. It would, dramatically expand opportunities for things like contact tracing, very good evidence-based AmeriCorps programs that will do things to help deal with, basic needs, food, shelter, and education. And I think that's exciting. I will say that the legislation also does something very important, which it would increase the living stipend to 175% of the federal poverty rate, which is something I know City of New York has been thinking about and working on, as of all of our other cities across the country. The great challenge is that we have in our major urban centers in this country, we have extraordinary wealth, and we have some of the deepest concentrated generational poverty. And that cost of living can make it very difficult for very talented young adults to spend a year or two of their lives working, on a living stipend in a city like New York. And this would elevate that through the federal government to something like 20 or 22,000. It would create a whole new floor for sustaining good evidence-based AmeriCorps programs in New York and across the country. And it would give an opportunity for hundreds of thousands of high school graduates and especially college graduates or young adults working their way through college that are going to have that disrupted and are probably heading towards unemployment. It would give them an opportunity to really contribute to addressing COVID directly, the immediate crisis and the aftermath and the recovery. I'm wondering if Ann Morra, if you're on the call, if you'd like to say more about the latest and how everyone can support that. And I also want to appreciate Emma Videra of the New York board for all of her great work and op-ed that she got published, I think is, really moving the needle with some influential leaders.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Jim. And great to be with everybody. Yes, Emma is, of course, an MVP. We go back to the days of the Serve America Act, working on that together. I also want to acknowledge Ali Zelenko, who has been helping us with some amazing press outreach, and we're feeling great about that. I wanted to just share a little bit about where we are. We have been working very hard in tandem with Senator Coons and Congressman Price and Congressman Matsui in the House. And we've built a bicameral, bipartisan bill in both chambers that is getting a lot of momentum. We now have almost 50 co-sponsors in the House and are still working to build the ranks on the Senate side. Importantly, we have co-sponsors that include Tom Cole, who is the ranking member on our Appropriations Subcommittee in the House, and he's been very supportive over the years, as well as a handful of other Republicans. So where we are is we were working hard to try to get it into the HEROES package that Speaker Pelosi has been putting together. We do not believe that we have succeeded in doing that. However, there is a marker, we understand, in that package, and we have a commitment from the Speaker to make sure that there is national service in the final vehicle, and that that at least parts of the Coons Price Matsui effort will be included in the final vehicle. We're now taking our game over to the Senate side. I was actually just texting with Senator Coons, who's been on this day and night, literally around the clock. And we are gaining momentum around building bipartisan support on that side. Senator Coons and Senator Cassidy co-authored an op-ed that was on CNN.com earlier this week. There's been, as you know, just a ton of media around this, and people are really looking at national service not only as a response recovery strategy, but also as part of an answer to the growing unemployment, particularly among young people. So we see real opportunity in this, and are going to continue to keep you all posted as we continue to build momentum around these packages. We really do believe, and Senator Coons believes, that the time is now to really try to make a big move on this. It's interesting because the package you put together, the proposal, really doubles down on the existing infrastructure and seeks to lean into the organizations that are on the front lines like ours that are doing essential work rather than trying to stand up something new. And I think that's important. He is somebody who sort of came out of the field. He ran an AmeriCorps program, and he was served on a state commission. So he really deeply understands kind of the architecture of the field and what will be needed to ramp it up. And, you know, he's very committed to increasing the stipend and the education award because he knows that more and more young people will have difficulty, particularly in this economic environment, participating in national service unless it's viable for them to do that without additional support. So we're really encouraged. You know, again, sort of hit a hurdle in the House, but do not at all feel like we are out of the game on this, and we are excited about the prospects and look forward to keeping you all up to speed and engaged. And again, big thanks to Emma and to Allie for their help with all of the efforts.
Well, that's the end of our formal part of the program, but I'm going to pass it off to back to City Year to open it up for questions.
Hello, my name is Vanessa Cruz. I get to be the Managing Director of Development and Communications for City Year New York. I wanted to extend a thank you to Natalie and Jim for making the time to be with us today. Thank you so much. This means so much to our New York audience. So some rules for asking questions in our Zoom environment. We would now like to open it up to the entire audience. If you would like to ask a question, please indicate so by chatting or typing your questions into the chat. The moderators will acknowledge the question and acknowledge the question asker, and you can take yourself off of mute to ask the question, and the appropriate person will respond. We have 15 minutes, so we hope to get in as many questions as possible.
While we're waiting for questions, I'll mention that if you're wondering, for the New York audience there, that picture behind me, that is the classic picture of Bucky Dent ripping the heart out of the Red Sox in Fenway Park in the late 70s. I know you had to deal with a picture of the Patriots with one of our great City of New York Corps members earlier. I thought I'd balance it out and say the guy in Boston's a Yankees fan.
Diversity is good, right? Good.
Exactly.
Cool.
Jim, we have a question from Allie Zelenko. Allie, if you want to ask.
Hi, I'm glad you said that, Jim, because I was wondering what that was. And thank you so much for being with us. It really, really means a lot for you to spend some time with us, so thank you. I actually have a comment and a question. I just wanted to share with everybody, I'm trying to pull up some data that is not, excuse me. I'm trying to pull up some data that is not, for some reason my phone isn't working, so I'll just ask my question. How are the City Year Corps members doing nationwide? These are people who are young in and of themselves. In some cases, they're stuck in cities that aren't home for them. And how are they doing?
Yeah, Allie, first of all, thank you for everything that you do. And thank you for asking that question. I think, that was really our immediate first concern, and especially thinking about the wonderful young men and women that are away from home and everything that meant, and being, separated from family, and including many of our Corps members, have part-time jobs to make things work, which were all, the first jobs to go. So I think, the work we had to do to make sure they could all get their stipends and get their ed awards was really important. We've increasingly been doing things before the pandemic to increase access to good mental health services. We've sort of increased that. One of the positive things that's come out of this is that just to leverage the strength of the whole, we've had some of our national teams working on weekly programming. And I think the core members are actually, this may be something that's an innovation that comes out of it, is that, having over 2,000 core members on a call like this, doing trainings and reflecting and chatting with each other has been uplifting and invigorating. But I think, every day is a challenge. I think what's really perhaps the most heartening thing is that our core members are just really miss their students. And I think, thankfully, the vast majority of them are now in a position that they're interacting and connecting with their students. And I think that helps them feel like in some ways they're completing their year. We have seen an uptick in core members that want to return for a second year, I think because they feel like the mission wasn't completed and their students need them even more. But again, I think, we're doing everything we can to make sure they're safe. They have access to the things that they need, and that we're using some of the some of the new time they have when they're not working with students. We're trying to invest more in their leadership development, life after City Year. So we've been bringing in all kinds of different experts and leaders that expose them to career pathways. So many good things are happening, but I think it's something we have to be thinking about every day, because these are just extraordinary young people, all facing their own unique challenges that impacts, on some of their health, their family's health, and, half of them living in cities that are not their home city.
Thank you. I did call up the thing that I was looking for that I just wanted to share with you and with the team. Essence Magazine just came out with a study, and I think some of these stats really apply to what you were talking about before, this educational crisis, that as we're trying to get people to support City Year and they say, well, I'm only focusing on pandemic related issues right now, this is pandemic related. So here are two stats I just want to share with everybody really quickly. Essence Magazine did a poll of a bunch of their readers. This was almost 2,000 African-American women. The majority of them who are parents, 85%, say there are not enough computers or laptops in their household to support the educational needs of their children. And 79% say their children are not getting enough support from their school systems. So I just think that's very telling, and it's true for the African-American population. We can assume it's true for others as well. And we should be looking for more data like that to show people that this is interrelated to everything that's going on right now.
Yes.
And Allie, this is Mithra. Just to add to those awesome statistics, we're also hearing from our leaders in our sites that a lot of kids are missing from the system, like 22,000 in Philly, over like 15,000 in LA. Sure, that's true in New York as well, but just not checking in, even if there is virtual learning. And I think we can play a role in that too.
I think, and the points just made by Mithra and Allie are so important, that it's not, this is a multi-dimensional challenge, and schools are, as vital as they are to learning and development, they're more than that. They're a safe place. If we don't get the economy restarted, it's going to be hard to do that without schools being effective and students being engaged. So they really are very much at the heart of helping our communities, is finding ways to help our schools function and support our students and the staff in those schools. A huge part of the recovery.
Looks like we have another question in the chat from Regina Hitchery. Regina, would you like to come off mute and ask your question?
I'll try to do that. Let's see if I can even get to.
Hi, Regina.
Let's see. Where's the?
Yay, Regina!
How do I do the picture? Well, you got me. You got what I've got. I can't.
We got you. You look great.
I can't figure out anything more than that. I'm actually coming off having shingles on the left side of my head, and yet so far I don't have the vision completely back in the left eye. So sorry about that. I'm kind of wobbly. Hi, everybody. It's great to see your faces, and thank you, Jim and Natalie and everyone for getting this hosted and sharing. I really appreciate it. As I think about the new core members coming aboard and how critical they are to City Year's promise, and knowing that we have had a very bumpy time with this virus from January till now, I'm curious, what plans do you have what can you do? What help do you need to kind of keep the new recruits from dissolving in front of your eyes as maybe bad news comes or different opportunities come their way, so that they're here when you're ready to start training.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, there are probably some others on the call that can add to this, but I think that, that has been a major focus, because we've seen, 20-25% sort of loss, sort of post-confirmation withdrawals, of core members who don't show up. And I think we've been studying that for the last 2 years, Regina, and testing strategies, which we're, deploying all of those. And I think we've got some dynamic new leadership, in recruitment and admissions at our headquarters. I think we've learned a lot. And there's just a great partnership happening, across the system to stay close to those young adults, to have personal connections, and especially to have relationships with the host city, where they're either their home city, if they're serving there, or if they're going to another city, really connecting them. I will say it makes a difference when local boards and local investors, offer to find ways to reach out, to send messages, to tell young adults how important their work will be and how excited they are to support them. And I would say we've seen time and time again that the young adults that graduate from City Year, are sort of uniquely qualified to accelerate as leaders, whether it's in the private sector, education, or government. And I think sometimes we need the help of our private sector supporters and educational leaders to communicate that message to them, that, that this really is a reciprocity model, that you will do a year or two of service that will be among the hardest years of your life. You will have an opportunity to help change the lives of those that you serve, but that in the end, you'll come out a better, stronger person, and you'll have more opportunities. And I think that message in particular, any creative way that all of you can help, get that message to the 200 plus amazing young people that have already confirmed in New York next year would be really helpful.
Great, thank you. It looks like we have another question in the chat from Alex Block. Alex, if you'd like to come off mute to ask your question.
Sure. Thanks, Jim. This has been really helpful and great speaking with you. My question is about other organizations doing virtual concerts or virtual events to raise money and awareness. And I wanted to know if City Year is considering anything like that, because as a board member on the associate board, how we raise money is just continuing momentum, right? We had a fundraiser. We want various touch points to continue to raise money. And this is difficult for us to raise money and continue having touch points when we can't take them to schools or show them core members. So are you is City Year considering anything that's virtual to continue focusing on the impact and giving fundraisers like us the opportunity to bring our networks?
Yeah, I think I might actually call on Allison Graf-Weisner, who's on the call, to talk a little bit about that. She's the head of development, because there's a lot of creative things happening. Before I do, I'll just say anything that we can do to support you all in New York, that's very important to us. So if there are creative ideas on this call or as a follow-up, in ways that we're just like being described or other ways, please know that we're deeply committed to supporting you. Allison, do you want to talk about some of what we're seeing across the network?
So Jim, it's
nope. I'm here.
Okay.
I am experiencing my own homeschool challenges right at the moment when we're talking about fundraising. So thanks for your the great comment that Natalie had earlier about what we're all juggling. I guess I'd say three things. One, this education narrative that was brought up on the call, and really being able to tell that story and asking us what else we can give you to help tell that story is a big part of it. The second, many sites are still doing virtual campaigns. I know City Year New York has been pushing hard virtually to raise the money that would have come in the gala. And then we are thinking about both virtual graduations and a back to school fundraising campaign to help support. So there's a lot of innovation happening across the country, and I love the local efforts, but also thinking about how we can drive national efforts to raise more resources. So if there are additional tools that we can provide you in New York with the great team that you have, happy to do that. And we really are looking at bright spots and new ways of raising money, not just in this year, all of our galas were canceled, but as we look towards next year when we anticipate a different approach to event-based fundraising as well.
And one idea, I don't know if everyone was able to see that sort of 2-minute video at the beginning, which was a highlight of different virtual service from across the country, including New York. And I know New York's got a lot of its own examples of that. You know, potentially we could work with you to help produce something, you know, polished, you know, that's exclusively New York focused, if that would be helpful. And you could use that, you know, to push out, to try to engage people to contribute.
So we have time for one more question in the last 4 minutes. Esther, I know you don't have a question, but you have a comment. So if you'd like to take yourself off mute.
Well, since we only have 4 minutes, I just wanted to reiterate what Natalie had to say earlier, and I believe what Allison just pointed to is that parents are juggling a lot right now with trying to help support their students, whether they go to a private school, whether they go to a District 75 school, or somewhere in between. And I think that City Year's track record and how they have supported students that are the most in most need in our communities is simply enough reason to dig a little bit deeper into your heart, into your soul, and into your pocketbooks, and realize that this is now more than ever the most important thing. People keep talking about education. Actually, I'm sorry, people don't talk about education. People keep talking about how are we going to open the economy? Well, it's really how are we going to open education? Because without education, we will never have an economy. So I think that that is something, a fear of not having education for these students should be enough for you. Yes, it's great to have ripples of hope, but have a little fear that we are actually setting ourselves back 2-3 years, where we could actually be projecting ourselves forward and really creating new classroom sizes, new ways of thinking about individual education plans for all students, which is how it should be across the board. And City Year has been absolutely phenomenal in going in and supporting our students of crisis, but in my beautiful future that I create in my head, which will come to fruition one day, I believe that City Year will be in all schools, because I don't think any teacher, whether or not there is economic instability or not, or emotional instability or not, I think all teachers need this kind of support. So in my world, this City Year should be everywhere. And so I think that that's my comment and not a question, if that's okay, Vanessa. And lovely, Vanessa, to see your fireplace while I'm sweating here in Brooklyn.
It's a very real fireplace.
Are you gonna tell her the truth? Are you gonna give up the ghost?
Come on, Vanessa. Wait.
It's not real. It's one of my fake backgrounds that I have. And I picked fireplace. But yes, I would love you all to think that I am sitting next to a beautiful fireplace right now in this beautiful all-white situation. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming. I think that was a wonderful note to end on. It really means so much to all of us that you were able to make this space and make time for us. I really want to thank Natalie. I want to thank Jim, and Maura, Mithra, Allison, for taking the time to speak with us. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to anyone at City Year New York. We're happy to get you in touch with anyone at headquarters. I'm going to leave my email in the chat box, and please feel free to reach out to me, and I'm happy to connect you with anyone that you'd like to speak to. So on that note, thank you so much for coming to our first Fireside Chat Zoom presentation. We appreciate all of you, and I hope you have a great evening.